We are joined today by Joe Sharp, COO and CFO of the Jewish Leadership Academy, JLA, in Miami, Florida. Joe, thanks so much for making the trip up to see us here in New England.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
When we were talking a few days ago, Joe, you said one of the biggest challenges you had early in your career was that you didn't realize how people were perceiving you at work. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually an ongoing issue. I don't want to pretend that I've got this figured out and solved. Especially when I first started becoming a manager, I thought that the way that I would operate best would be just to kind of put my head down, get the work done. I don't want to be bothered by background noise and the chit chat and drama in the office. Just focus on the work. And I didn't realize that part of my work was the chit chat and the drama and getting into it a little bit in a healthy way, interacting with people. I initially thought that was kind of a waste of time, a waste of productivity. But I found out the hard way that not engaging in some of that was going to be detrimental to my productivity and my ability to get work done. And so it was a little bit of a trial by fire. I had a great coach. Also, my wife, who's very adept at this, was also whispering in my ear, and going through the steps of really understanding how I tick, how I operate, being able to see through other people how I appear. It's tough, and it has been, but at least I'm a little more self-aware now than I used to be. This has been a years-long process, but it needs constant fine-tuning. And the result is that when I'm doing it right and when I'm the most self-aware and able to manage my emotions in the way I'm perceived and be able to do the things that I know are appropriate and I know are necessary, I'm getting a lot more done than I would without it. I'm able to roll out projects a lot smoother. I'm able to manage and lead people better. I'm able to get people to buy in and collaborate with me. And also, I'm a lot better at seeing how other people are doing things wrong than looking at myself and recognizing how I look.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of us have that.
So yeah.
What's the phrase? Don't throw stones in glass houses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So going through this journey has given me the ability to advise other people and to look at other people and say, hey, you're doing this thing, and I think you should be doing it a little differently, and that'll be, great benefit to you. At the same time, I should be listening to that advice as well, because it is an ongoing process. For me, for my personality, for whatever programming I had from the very beginning, in terms of how I thought that I should go out and into the workforce and how I should be professional. The deprogramming from that, and then trying to incorporate the emotional intelligence has been a journey. But I think it's helped me. It's also helped those around me, and I'm proud of the work I've done. But I know that I've got a ways to go, and it really is an ongoing, lifelong process.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, Joe. You're talking about the not loving small talk, but of course, you and I met years ago and see each other every year, kind of like the consummate small talk event for independent schools, MBOA. And it's also funny because a lot of time people who would consider themselves introverts or introverted in typical situations, once you engage them at a networking event, or if you're enjoying a cocktail, it's they won't stop talking. Because I actually think that about myself sometimes. But how important have you found those types of events from being in a leadership position at now 2 or 3 independent schools? 2?
It's my second independent school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Being able to bring that networking know-how to these events.
So that was part of the strategy. Actually, I grew up tagging along with my father, who was a professional and went to conferences and was part of professional organizations and took leadership roles in those organizations. So I went to conferences my whole life, and as I got a little older and then eventually started to work for him for a little bit, that was just part of my life. And so there was a part of me that always sought out finding these networks and going to the conferences and doing the networking. I didn't quite know how to do the work to get the most out of those events yet, but that was something that sort of came naturally to me. I mentioned I had a coach, years ago, who was helping me through some of the, just the interpersonal stuff around the office and the chit-chatting and trying to open up a little more. But what he told me was that he himself is an introvert, which I didn't expect either, even after having known him for some time. And he was president of some professional organization, and he would get up and give speeches. And he would describe to me as like a physical pain and exhaustion that he went through doing these things, going to the events, doing the chit-chatting, getting up and speaking publicly. But he challenged himself to it, and he challenged me to challenge myself. And so I started doing more of that. If I was going to conferences already, typically I'd be, okay, let me just go into that session, find the chair in the back corner, and just sit there, taking all the information, and run back to my room or wherever,
Yeah.
and make a phone call or pretend I'm making a phone call and just avoid all human contact. I thought that was productive. I thought that was getting the most out of that conference, that professional opportunity. But he challenged me to, hey, find a seat in the middle of the room or the front of the room. Just get in there. You see, chit chat around, the social hour. Just get in there and introduce yourself or make yourself available to people. It inspired me to volunteer to introduce sessions at something like MBOA or give sessions with MBOA or EDS, other conferences and groups that I've been a part of. It is painful. It's emotional. It's emotionally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. It's draining, but it does feel great. To your point, I do feel good afterwards, and I do miss it, and I do look forward to them, but it is just draining, and it's a lot of work. For some, they have other challenges. That's not one for them.
That's
This is
true.
a real
Everybody's got their
challenge.
thing.
Yeah. But I know that it's necessary, and so I do have to kind of keep pushing myself, like with all the other areas for improvement. It's something that I have to just keep pushing myself to do and not get that atrophy and not fall into like the very comfortable, just slide in and sit back and watch all that happen. So it's been fun. It's scary. But it's rewarding.
Yeah, I always forget, and I think a lot of people do when you're talking about like introverts versus extroverts. You're like, oh, the introvert is the quiet one, and the extrovert is like out there like talking louder or like getting all the attention. But it's actually not really anything to do with that, right? Like what you said, it's really like you could be the person talking to everybody, but it's how the effect it has on you afterward. Like they always say, I think like an extrovert actually gains energy from those situations, whereas like you say, an introvert, it's like physically exhausting to do it, but you could still be very good and effective at it. It's just like that night you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Like
there's
anything
a lot
with
to gain
exercise.
from it also.
Yeah.
Maybe not the, just that energy and enjoyment, but there is some reward there also, definitely.
Joe, you mentioned that when you first took on a managerial role is when you kind of started exercising your extrovertness, if you will. What was that first managerial role? Was it within an independent school? Was it something totally separate?
No, it was a wholesaler manufacturer. We manufacture product overseas, and our customers were all the big box stores: Walmart, Costco, Sam's Club, Target, and places like that. And I had a group that I managed in the office. I was CEO of that company, and actually, the journey that I took in that company, I've tried to replicate that whenever possible as a leader and a manager. I came in at a very busy time of the year for the company, and it kind of made sense to have me just give a hand in the warehouse. We were talking about the mailroom before. I was packing boxes and shipping stuff out and unloading trailers for hours on end. I think some people knew that in a couple months I'm going to be the CEO of the company. Others didn't, but it gave me a chance to not just understand the inner workings of the business at every level, which was obviously very important for my job, but to get to know the people on a more intimate level and just a more relaxed level, relaxed for me, relaxed for them. And I think that really helped my transition, and it made it a lot easier for me to, I didn't have to be an extrovert necessarily or to really push back too much on my introverted nature because I had already set set that groundwork, and it had those relationships developed. But, you know, aside from that, I don't know what opportunity I would have had to establish the groundwork for those relationships. And we don't always have those opportunities, and so you have to do the work. And even if you have that foundation, there's turnover constantly, and you know, people themselves change. So it really is an ongoing process. And you know, I was fortunate to have had that opportunity there. But it's, you know, every place is different. Every situation is different.
What do you think so you kind of got your start in like a manufacturing world a little bit.
I got a little taste of everything.
Yeah.
You know, everything. You know, I took pieces of everything to bring it to where I'm at today, which I'm grateful for and proud of. My first job out of high school was in retail, then into wholesale sales, and then wholesale as a controller.
So how did you end up in the education industry?
I always joke that it's not a joke, but you know, God was just pulling the strings.
Yeah.
There is really no rhyme or reason for it. My wife's uncle was head of school. He was about to retire at Catsillo.
Yeah.
And we were at a family party in New York, and we're just sitting, you know, drinking something on the rocks. And he's like, you know, we need an executive director. It's business. You know business. It'll be good for you. Come to Florida. And I'd been living in Chicago all my life up until that point, and never thought of leaving Chicago, certainly not anywhere but New York, where my wife is from. Working in a school, I didn't even understand that. My wife is a teacher. That's fine for teachers. My mother, you know, is a lifelong educator and owned a preschool for a number of years. I didn't see myself in that space. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the office at school, but not behind the desk, usually on the other side of the desk from the principal or the disciplinarian.
Detention slips or something.
Exactly. I thought I was done. I thought I was done with school. So that was kind of a shock. It didn't really make a lot of sense. You know, he worked on me. I think, you know, he told my wife to plant the seeds. And over just a couple days really, I went and interviewed with the president of the school. And I was in the office 10 days after they hired me and moving at the same time. It was completely insane. If we took any more time to think about it as a family, you know, at the time we had, you know, our oldest was going into fourth grade. Our youngest, you know, was 3 or 4 years old. If we took any more time to think about it, it never would have happened. I mean, logic would have set in at some point, but we were at a point where, you know, it was just that small window in our lives where we said, you know what, I think a change of pace would be great. Change of pace for our family, moving to Florida and just trying something new. And it really did not make a lot of sense at all, but it was the best thing that happened to us as a family, professionally. It really, you know, brought me into a completely different career that wasn't so different. You know, it was still, you know, the operations and the finance that I was used to in a slightly different setting, obviously. And I'm really proud that, you know, I've had the opportunity to learn over the last, you know, 12 plus years how to you know, bring my skills to the private school world and learn from so many great people along the way.
So on that note, where you said you like to kind of get on the ground floor with people, have you taught any classes yet?
I've tried. It is truly frightening. At my previous school, yes, exactly. Even for a professional, apparently. You know, I tried doing an elective at my previous school, which was a lot of fun. You know, personal finance for middle schoolers. The kids had a lot of fun. I was good until the class size started growing, like by the second semester, and it was just too many. I couldn't handle, you know, the discipline. I'm always tentative, like, these aren't my kids, so I can't really tell them what to do. I don't know how teachers do it. I don't know how they would have managed me. So it was a lot of fun. I did get a lot out of it. I think COVID brought an end to it. We were doing it remotely, you know, to finish out that year, and then it didn't continue after that. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak for just a couple minutes to our middle schoolers about 9/11, since, you know, none of them had experienced that. And just share, you know, nothing special or unique about my experience, but just to give them an insight into, you know, what that day was like for us, and, you know, the technology that we were dealing with then, and the way the news came to us at that time. It was fun and great, like going to conferences, but it was really scary, and I don't know how they do it. Nobody wants my job, and I don't think anybody wants me teaching.
So, Joe, you were just talking before about how you went from the business world into Catzell Day School, and now your position at the Jewish Leadership Academy in Miami. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like kind of your journey in the education space has really been a result of just the network that you've built over the years. And it sounds like even early on, it was kind of like who you knew. So can you talk a little bit about how you came into your current role?
Yeah, so I'd been in a place at Catzell where I'd been for 9 years. There's a lot that I was proud of that I was able to be a part of. I felt like I was kind of stuck in the routine and trying to challenge myself to find ways to grow within my position, to grow on behalf of the school, to bring new more funding or new programs or new ideas to the school. Again, we accomplished a lot together, and I just felt like they'd be good without me. Like they could keep this going. We're pretty set up, and my personality just didn't jive with just put it on autopilot and clock in, clock out, and
Yeah, you
and
wanted
call
a
it
new
day.
challenge.
Yeah, I really just wanted to push myself, and wasn't necessarily limiting myself to the private school space. There are opportunities out there, and some were more exciting than others. And when the Jewish Leadership Academy opportunity crossed my path, it actually wasn't even really in that capacity. Somebody had sent me a real estate article that this land was purchased for a brand new school in Miami, and said, "Hey, why don't you talk to this guy, and maybe there's something you can help them with." It didn't pay too much attention to it. Shortly after that, there were 3 people that said, "Hey, we know of this person who ended up being the head of school. We know him from some previous roles. He's coming to Florida. Why don't you just talk to him, help him get settled, and show him the ropes." Actually, a couple of them didn't even know he was working in a school. They only knew about his role working for the family foundation that our founders set up. And eventually, I just reached out and called him and said, "Hey, I'm me. You're you. Like people said, we should talk. And I understand you're moving to our neighborhood." And that's what it was. I think the first time, and I think there was a follow up, trying to find out what part of the neighborhood to move in, and schools for the kids and stuff like that. Maybe a month or two later, when I really had my eyes and ears open to new opportunities, and this is 2020, after COVID, where everybody's just looking for something different, and we're just kind of feeling like in the rut, or we had the opportunity to kind of step out of ourselves and out of our lives and assess things and reassess things. I think they called me and said, "Hey, we're doing this thing. We said that we weren't really looking to hire anyone, especially not in this capacity, for a couple years down the road. But we realized, hey, we need someone now. There's just no way we can keep going forward without building out this team and having someone on the business end of things. Is this something that you're interested in?" And I said, "All right, let's talk." And they're like, "Great. In 10 minutes, we're going to get on a Zoom. It'll be me and the founder and the president." And we spoke, and yeah, over a couple months, initially I wasn't so excited by it because I felt, listen, I have a great position here at Catzell. It's close to the house. I know I know my constituencies. I worked hard to try and gain people's trust. Obviously that was an ongoing process, but I know all the players. It's comfortable. My wife teaches at the school. She still teaches at the school. It seemed very easy, and I probably could have stayed there, till the end of time. But another school. What are they going to offer me? I'm already at a great school, and I'm already doing great things here. Eventually, I realized what an incredible, maybe once in a lifetime opportunity JLA was, and has turned out to be. Maybe more so than I thought. Building something from the ground up was just too incredible of an opportunity, and also working with the people that I'm working with, the founders of the school, and understanding their mission, their passion, and the vision that they had, and seeing how they've brought it to life. It's really just a blessing to be a part of it.
And in terms of that parent communication, I'm building trust with the parents, the students, the families. That's so important. So you mentioned that they mentioned some of the concerns, or not necessarily concerns, but things about the space. So do you have regular meetings? Like, how did you kind of find this out?
When we first got out into the community, we set up a number of parlor meetings. It ended up being over 10. I don't think we had planned to schedule that many from the outset. We were really out there to share what we thought was a mostly fully formed program. We had our posters and our slide deck and our videos, and everything was all slick looking. But like I said, as soon as they raised their hands for questions, we were looking at each other like, okay, I guess we got to do that. I guess we got to do that. Even something like busing. We said, we're not doing busing. We're not getting involved in it. They're going to get here however they get here. We're easy enough to get to. And it was, I think the first or second question at our first parlor meeting was,
so you're
hey,
doing busing now.
Exactly. And so, I wish we weren't, but we are. And that's what people wanted. And fast forward, the majority of our students take busing to get to the school. So we learned a lot from them, whether it was from the Q&A or from, standing around talking afterwards. And we're still learning. We're still learning. Last year, our first year with students, we learned a lot. There are things that we didn't end up getting a chance to do, that we had planned to do, and things that kind of came up that were, maybe a last second thought, that now that's going to be a thing now. And so we've been learning the whole time. At the beginning, we were just a few of us in an office for the first number of months. Like I said, we thought we had it all figured out until we got out into the community. And got to hear from them. It's fresh eyes, and it's also, these are the people that we're trying to serve. So if that's what they want, then we should think about that. And then the next phase was when we were going out and hiring faculty, and hearing some of their comments. Even though we have great professionals and educational leaders on our staff, but getting more perspectives is what's helped us develop our program, even from the outset. A few weeks ago, I happened to come across our initial slide deck that was produced before I was in the picture. And it was, a little bit was laughable because so much has changed, and it's unrecognizable to where we are today, and the slide deck that we just created for donors. But it was actually really nice because the core of it, the mission, the vision, we checked every box. And even though the schedule is not the schedule, that a lot of the ideas that we had didn't happen yet, or didn't happen quite the way that we envisioned it. Somehow, through all the changes and taking in all the feedback, we have not veered from our mission and from the things that were important to us.
I think that's such a good point for any team or organization that you bring up, because you didn't stray from your mission or your values, but you did bring in these additional opinions to help create the thing. And like you said, different sets of eyes, they're thinking about different things, which is relatable to every organization. If you're one team, you're thinking about it, as this team, I'm thinking this. But then you have another team, in your case, parents or teachers looking at it, and they're like, that doesn't quite work for what we need. And then it's that additional set of eyes saying, let's do it this way instead. And so that collaboration, that ongoing collaboration is really so important, and especially the schools, but any organization. So that's really cool that you have that as kind of an ongoing process.
Yeah, we obviously do put a great deal of value into people's feedback, and we seek it out. I mean, we just did surveys a few months ago of all of our constituencies, the parents, the students, and the faculty. But we had the commitment from our founders from the very beginning. They said, listen, you'll get what you need. We're going to let you do what you do best. We'll do what we do best. And we didn't have that added pressure that a lot of organizations and schools certainly might have when your stakeholders have are a little more threatening in their presence, and you might be you might veer a certain way because a certain person said it, and it may not be what's best for the organization. It's given us the freedom to take the feedback in, sit back, and you know what? If we don't go with the opinions, we know that we have the support of our board and our founders, that they know that we took it seriously, but we decided at the end of the day, this is the direction that we want to go in, or the direction we want to keep going in, even though we have some feedback that says otherwise.
So, Joe, you obviously have a pretty big network too in the independent school community, and I don't know. I personally feel like I see new schools crop up pretty often. However, you do sometimes see they can't make it past a couple years, or there's enrollment issues and things like that. But within your network, if somebody called you up and said, Joe, I've seen what you guys have done in Miami and how it's been such a success with JLA. Here's my idea for a school. What do you think? Should I take the plunge like you did?
Yeah, so I do get these calls often, and I've worked with a few groups that have tried to open new schools or have a great idea, but are kind of stuck, being tentative, and they're trying to overthink it, so they don't end up like that school that has to close up shop. And I've spoken with schools that are going through, they're already bought in, they're opening up, and they want to know some of the tales from the trenches, so they don't go through any of the growing pains and mistakes that others went through. But the ones that are kind of stuck, to your point, yes, you don't want to end up on the cutting room floor. You don't want to be that school that closed up and that didn't have it all figured out. But you also don't want to second guess yourself and, oh, you know what, I should have opened that school, but I just never did it. I was too afraid. If you're already at the point where you recognize there's a demand and you're in a clear enough headspace that you're actually thinking about doing something about it, there will not be a better time for you to go ahead and get that idea developed and open that school. The longer you wait, it'll never happen. If you're trying to find like that situation where everything is perfect, you'll never accomplish anything. So there has to be a bit of a leap of faith. There's going to be risk. It's how you set yourself up to manage the risk. The people around you, whether it's a professional team or advisors, if you have a board or funders, if you can build a team around you that will allow you to do what needs to be done, but also give you the pushback and give you that feedback. So it's not all just siloed ideas, and you do get other perspectives. You have a pretty good chance of succeeding, but you don't have to rely on miracles, especially when it comes to funding and enrollment. But you've got to just jump in sometimes. And if it's a good idea and if there is demand, the people will come, the resources will come, and just a little bit of it, just a little blip on the radar in enrollment and a little blip on the radar in funding and resources will be enough to encourage you and encourage others around you to say, hey, you know what, this is a project that's going somewhere, I want to get behind it, and then it'll take off from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good message, and kind of a little bit of a trend with you, because it sounds like you did the same, leaving Chicago and going down to Florida, which then opened up this new opportunity also. I wanted to talk a bit now about tax credit scholarships, which is, when we were talking before this interview began, it's something that is pretty prominent at JLA, correct? With the tax credit scholarship program. And when we're talking, just so the audience is aware, we're going to kind of be talking with, it's from a Florida perspective.
Yes.
Because Florida has this program, and there are several other states across the country that have this or have been discussing it. But specifically for this, it's interesting to talk about because it's such a hot button state issue.
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of the progression in the state of Florida in my 12 plus years there. But it's interesting to know that over half the country now, I think it's up to 29 states, have some sort of program in place. They're not all the same, and they're not all like Florida, but it's the majority of the country now, and there's other states that have that on the ballot, in the ballot box, or it's up for discussion. Some have had things that have sunset that like the failing school, it didn't quite take. But it is something that's really taken off, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of the frustrations that the parents and students and teachers felt, through the pandemic, inspired, really bipartisan support for a lot of school choice in other states that didn't have programs yet. So we are seeing a movement across the country, and to some degree at the federal level also. Florida is one of the trendsetters. It started small. It actually started very large. I believe they tried to pass a statewide voucher, I think under Governor Bush, long before I got to Florida. It got shot down. I think it was unconstitutional also in the way that they constructed it, but they kind of took a few steps back and said, we're not going to go for the home run. We're going to start hitting singles. And when I came into the picture in Florida, we were making our way to first base. We had a few students. It was meant for the lowest income families. I believe there was also scholarships for students with disabilities and special needs at that point, if not shortly thereafter. And those were the 2 scholarships that were available in Florida for low income and for special needs and other disabilities. The idea was always to expand on that, raise the income threshold so more students can be included, perhaps broaden the scope of the disabilities that were allowable for the scholarship. And that's what happened. And there were a lot of battles waged over that time. Different administrations, different justices in the Florida courts, and a lot of movements on both sides of the issue, pushing back and forth on it. But slowly, it grew. And the result was that it was inspiring some competition. Competition is a good thing usually, and it does breed success. And it's been giving schools the opportunity, even on the public school side or the charter school side, to say, hey, you know what? There's competition. It's not quite a level playing field, but obviously there are parents who feel that this public school, which is free, which is right by their house, is not the best place for their child, and they are willing to go to lengths to, drive them somewhere else, pay tuition somewhere else, and we should kind of look at ourselves and say, hey, why can't we service these children better? And some of them can't. Even in the private school world, JLA is a school. We fill a niche. We are not a school for everyone, and we have a pretty good sense of who our clientele are, who our students are. But we know that there's other schools out there that will service the other students. And so, yeah, you're not going to be able to service everyone, but that's basically the model that public schools have had to be. It's nobody's fault. That's just how they were designed, in the same way that a lot of private schools are designed to be that one size fits all. But we're in a place now where, as communities have grown, and this applies to private schools as well, have the opportunity to have our schools meet the needs of our students, to fill more niches, to open more schools. We have resources to do that, and we know it's right, but we don't always have the opportunity and the resources to do it. But we're at the point now where that's where that's really necessary and possible. So the tax credit scholarships are giving families the opportunity to say, the school may not be free, but you can take this scholarship to a private school that serves your child best, and makes that transition a little easier. In fact, in Florida, part of the broad scholarship program I believe it's a $750 voucher for public school students who want, for families who want their child to go to another public school, but not in their designated district. For whatever reason, they feel that this public school that they're assigned to can't serve them best. They don't want to move to another district, but there's another school that can meet their needs. So it's really just a school choice program. and the ultimate goal is to service the students in the way that they need to be served best. And so it has gotten a lot of pushback, but Florida is one of the leaders and the trendsetters. And at this point, as of a couple of years ago, the program expanded to the point where it's virtually a universal scholarship program. There are some restrictions. They haven't met that threshold yet, and so it is essentially a universal program now. And I think they're one of maybe 10 or 12 states that have a universal program.
So where is that pushback primarily coming from?
It's coming from public schools, the teachers' unions primarily. Schools and the organizations involved in schools are a business. We all have missions, and sometimes our mission is primary, and sometimes it's right on par with the business side of things. But you still have to make it a viable business. One of the thoughts, from as far as I understand, is that teachers' unions depend on their dues from teachers, and if teachers are leaving the public school system because the students are leaving the public school system to go to the private schools, they will have less teachers in their unions to pay dues, and so they won't be as large of a union, and that's certainly something. And it's brought out a lot of studies, and you can read things any way you like, depending on what how you're trying to tell your story.
Right.
But people are scared. People are scared of what this means. Competition breeds excellence, but it's hard work. And if you're happy and settled into what you're doing at your school and in your job and your four walls, it could be scary to kind of be hit in the face and say, hey, you better get with the times or you're going to be obsolete. And so that's kind of what this has done, and what it can do to schools that are kind of stuck in complacency. And a lot of public school districts have really taken this on and said, you know what, we get the wake up call. Mm-hmm. We're going to get better.
Yeah. So you've seen instances where the public schools have been improved as a result.
Yeah, you can run more efficiently. In the classroom, I'm sure that if you had like 5 less students or 3 less students in the classroom, you might be able to run a more efficient classroom.
So my classroom, the last year that I was teaching, I had the biggest homeroom in the entire school. I had 31 kids, I think, in my homeroom. And I had, so the way that we had our classes set up is all of the children who needed special education services were in one classroom. So not only did I have the biggest class, but I also had a class with a lot of the special education service students in it. So that additional layer of support and support staff that you need in that room. Just listening to you talk about how people have the choice and that their kids, they have different needs, right? So just because someone's going to a private school doesn't mean that private school is going to meet their needs. I've had a few of my students, back when I was teaching, where they left the public schools for a little bit to try a private school, and then it didn't work for them. It was one of those, like, the grass wasn't greener kind of thing. So then they ended up coming back and getting additional services and saying like, oh, actually that wasn't a good choice for my student, and then we had plenty of students who left for charter schools, magnet schools, private schools. And they were like, yeah, no, this is a better fit for my child, because I think ultimately it comes down to like a fit for the family and the child. And the school, and it's just a means of getting them to the place where they fit and they feel safe and comfortable and heard, and they're able to have the best education possible.
Yeah, the stereotype for private schools might be like, for prestige, you want to go there because you're going to do better in life. But the truth is,
or people get the bumper sticker.
Exactly.
People like that,
right? We've moved on to magnets now.
Yeah.
There
Oh,
we
yes,
go.
yes, yes. Yeah.
A little more around there. It's not usually that anymore. I'm sure there is some of that, certainly, with some schools. But it really is just that. Getting your child what they need so they can, they can succeed. But the same way that students are voting with their feet and the families are, I would say teachers are too. I'm just throwing this idea out there. I haven't thought this through. But, if the teachers' unions are worried about teachers leaving their ranks, if schools are worried about their teachers going to a private school, or leaving the teaching profession altogether, maybe having a classroom that was more manageable, or maybe having resources that were efficient enough that the students could succeed and the teacher could enjoy the success that they're seeing in the students, might actually keep the teacher in their role in the public school system, or in any school, public or private. So it's not just setting the students up for success. I think it's setting up the teachers for success also. If you're not getting satisfaction out of the job, or it's just too overwhelming, or it's not what I signed up for, it's going to be hard to retain staff in that way also. And so again, there's two sides to every story, and I think we're seeing where at least in Florida, where people on both sides of the idea and the argument initially are kind of coming around and seeing how there are benefits, and there's plenty of hard work to do, but they're seeing the benefits of that. I mean, there is also a church and state argument that people have made, but it's not just religious schools. At least in Florida, half the schools are secular schools, and half the schools are religious schools, and almost half the students are in secular schools. So it really is not. It's not about religious schools, although that's pretty important. But that's also a need that families want filled. It's just getting your child what they need, and it may not happen at a public school, and it may not happen at 95% of the other private schools that are out there. There is just a school or a couple schools that you feel can serve your child best, and we're really just trying to give parents the opportunity to make those choices without as much hardship as they would have had otherwise.
That's an excellent point about teachers, though, and trying to retain them. My last year teaching, the public school received the second lowest fiscal budget from the town. So that was the town's choosing. I think the arts got a higher budget than us. Not that the arts aren't important, but you think about it in comparison to the students and their families and their education, it just seemed sometimes a little backwards, which as teachers, of course, we had feelings about. But so we had a 0% budget increase for the school district that year, but our union dues increased. So had I had stayed teaching, I actually would have been getting a pay decrease. And that was, among other things, one of the big things where I was like, I'm getting a pay decrease this year? What is this?
Yeah, I remember in 08, 09, when I was at the manufacturing company, manufacturing wholesale company, we were not lean at all. We really were almost Checkwriters level in terms of the amenities that we gave our staff. It was a fun place to be. And then everything just kind of hit the fan, and our orders were maybe 12 months out, and the retailers were panicking, canceling orders, and there was stuff already on the water, and we had to wake up really quickly and get lean very fast.
We're not too crazy here, Joe. Everything's with the client first.
Yeah, we didn't even have pickleball then.
Was it even invented yet? No.
Oh, that reminds me about you hear these stories about these not so much anymore, but 5 years ago you would hear the startups, and it was like free everything for the employees, right? And it's like they're drinking San Pellegrino on their lunch breaks, and all of a sudden it gets cut, and the free snacks are gone.
Yeah,
it's tap water.
We try to do that for our faculty, but it's an investment. It's not wasteful, and we were still doing some of those things back then also. But forcing yourself to look at your books and look at what you're doing and see what is an investment and what is just frivolous and unnecessary, or at least unnecessary at this time when you're going through this period, you can get more efficient. If that school or school district was feeling the pinch, or they saw, hey, enrollment's down and we're getting a lot of eyes on us saying, hey, what are you guys doing? And force them to take a look at things, they could say, you know what, we could still increase teacher pay, and which would increase teacher satisfaction. We could successful students. We could, put more money into this program so the students are learning more, and so maybe we're attracting more students to our school. But hey, what about that other thing that we've just been doing? Rubber stamping year after year. Like, ever looked at that? Like, is that really important anymore? Is that something people are interested in? So there's ways to get lean even while you're spending more in other areas. Just running more efficiently. And so this is a time, I think, that schools are looking at that, and also just understanding in the same way, through emotional intelligence. I guess you have to, self-manage and understand, like, who you are and what you are. Schools are doing that the same way. And it's really, this goes back to that living room conversation I had with my wife's uncle, trying to convince us to move to Florida. Hey, he said, we're just a business like you are. We're not a school. We're a business, and you could do your thing here, and it's the same thing. And I think he oversold it a little bit, but it really is just a business in that way. And schools themselves have been professionalizing for the last number of years, at least in the Jewish the private school world, which I know a little better than the private school world at large. It's gotten a lot more professionalized. Really great to see, and schools and teachers and students are all better for it. And as one school raises the bar, the other school has to follow, and it's been really great to see how we're all kind of coming around to that and trying to just run effective and efficient and successful businesses. Understanding that our mission is primary, and the students are number one. Faculty is 1A and 1B. And at least as a business office, we're just there to support that. But if we run it as a business, that's not like taboo. That's not like a dirty way to say it. It just means that we're going to make sure that they have all the best resources to keep doing their jobs, and so the students have facilities and the resources that they need to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because when you say you run it, it needs to be run like a business. People think, well, that means you're just running it for profit, but of course you're not. You're just saying you need those business principles in order to make it effective. But the purpose of the school is its mission, which is going to be child focused, education focused.
Well, and it's so funny that you keep saying that. So when I was a teacher, I had to get my master's, because in the state of Massachusetts, you're required to have a master's to get your professional teaching license. And so I actually decided to get my master's in business as a teacher, because I knew I wasn't going to be a teacher forever. And that was the exact thought process that I had is, well, if I ever want to like run a school or be a superintendent or something like that, I should get my master's in business, because schools are just a business, at least in terms of like principles and practice. So that was my exact mentality when I got my MBA, which I think is a little bit out of the box. And even like at the time when I would say that to other teachers, they were like, what? Like it didn't always go well.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
And then you left.
And then I left. So
you're probably a little ahead of the curve, but I am seeing a lot more of that also, where heads of school that have our career educators are either taking a greater interest in the business side, or taking on continuing education or things like that in the business side of things, or you have CEOs of schools that are not necessarily educators, but have that business sense, and know how just enough to be able to work with the educational leadership in the school, because there is it's not just the financial pressures, but it's understanding how to have employee satisfaction, and how to just incorporate all of the things that are coming at us that were not probably taught to teachers when they were getting their degrees, whether it's the marketing side of things, or just how to crisis management and things like that, that have been really critical to the success of a school or the success of a school leader. These are things that are probably more important than whether or not they know what an English curriculum, a good English curriculum might look like. And it's not to say that it's not important, but you have other people that can support that. But when, talking about crisis management, that person at the top is the one that's going to be responsible, and also responsible for preempting the crisis in the first place, for doing the things that are correct and not those other things. And so those things aren't necessarily taught. When you're doing student teaching, people are catching up to your idea and your trend.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the same thought process of just because you are very good at your job or good on your team doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make a good team manager. It's really the same thing with teaching. You can be an amazing teacher, but that doesn't mean that you can run a school. Sometimes you can. There's definitely people like that, but it doesn't always transfer perfectly. So there's definitely some additional skills and training needed.
It's the old thing, like you never make your best salesman your sales manager. Our sales manager is great. He was a good salesman too.
He is good at both.
Yeah, because then you take away, or the same thing, like you shouldn't make your best teacher the head of school because you lose your best teacher.
Exactly, yeah.
And it also is a different skill set. And sometimes the person has, a great handle and the capacity for both skill sets. And sometimes they don't. And that's not a knock on them, but they're just great at one thing and not great at the other thing.
But not to say that they shouldn't have any, because it is good to have, like when you were talking about your prior roles too, like experience throughout the organization is great, but it doesn't mean like you're the best at every role.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, especially if you're trying to take on any managerial or leadership role, you want to be able to understand what people are going through. You want to be able to understand what's going on in your organization. Sometimes the best way to know that is to experience it. And it'll make someone not just a productive leader, but just a great leader of people. If you can understand people better and know, when someone comes to you with an idea, whether that idea makes sense or not. I don't do, a lot of the things that I used to do, I don't do anymore. But I know just enough that when someone comes to me with a question or an idea or a suggestion, I could say that's an amazing idea, or I could say, what if you did it some other way? Try that, because I probably tried that myself at some point. So it is a great advantage to have gone through those experiences myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to end on, Joe. Bringing business acumen and that level of emotional intelligence to the independent school world is a great thing. So tell us, Joe, just briefly where people can connect with you, what you have, any upcoming projects or events you have going on. I know sometimes you do things with MBOA too, but you'll be at that conference in February, right?
I do hope to be there.
Yep.
Yes. I may pop into the EDS conference in December that you guys also participate in. And we've got FCIS. That's a
Florida Council.
Council.
Is that in November, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other opportunities to break out of my introverted shell, I'm sure, are always popping up on the horizon.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know
look forward
what?
to it.
But since we've known you, you say yes to anything that is like
Well, now you know why.
connections. Yeah.
Now you know
But
why.
it's good.
This
I
is
like
a good
that
way
attitude.
to break out of your introvert shell right
yes.
now.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're on LinkedIn also?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Yep.
That's how I network as an introvert. I love engaging
Although
with
it's
people.
becoming quite the extroverted platform now. It's like video, like every video is like people filming themselves like they're walking around. They're like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like TikTok all of a sudden.
Yeah,
You
so I-
posted a video, Dakota.
Yeah, I didn't say it's bad. I mean,
Oh, no,
So-
no. I'm just saying.
I told people I wanted to go to LinkedIn because I wanted it to be LinkedIn, and now LinkedIn became Facebook.
Yes.
So, I'm not
We've
sure what to
talked
do
about
anymore.
that several times.
you're just gonna have to go with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not I don't think the chair in the corner of the room equivalent social media platform exists anymore.
No, but it is a great way to connect with people still. And I just had someone reach out this morning. I'm not sure what they want yet, but we have a meeting scheduled in a couple days, and said, "Hey, I saw you. I want to talk to you, and have some ideas to run by you." And that's amazing. Where else would I have found that person?
Yeah,
So
it's true. It's really good for stuff like that.
It is great, and it also kind of feeds into the in-person networking. Also, follow-ups from LinkedIn at an in-person conference or vice versa.
Exactly.
I've had a ton of that, and that's really I enjoy it. I do.
All right. Very good. Thanks so much, Joe. We really appreciate your coming up.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Checkwriters. Be sure to follow us on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you view your favorite podcasts. Stay tuned for future episodes where we'll continue to uncover the secrets behind successful organizations.